This race break is brought to you by Here in Puckburg, a podcast on the Belly Up Sports Podcast Network. Your place for the daring, do bad, and good puck tales of the hockey
everyone,
community.
welcome live to 3YT.
But since this isn't a hockey event, I won't take up any more of your time.
In the Sim
Feel free to check out the podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Is
New
alongside
episodes drop
me
on
here
Monday,
for
Wednesday, Friday.
Brickyard
But until then,
going to be a
race
lot
hell,
of fun. It is
Praise
round
Wake
number
me up when we get to
23
Talladega.
of the
Let's
Sim
go racing,
Racers
drivers.
Club Premier Series, and it is going to be a good one here around the famed Brickyard here, Andre. 2.5 miles, 4 very unique corners in the world of motorsport, and a pretty good field here tonight.
Absolutely. It's going to be a fun night of racing. I always love Indianapolis. The corners are relatively flat, not very much banking to rely on, so a lot of off-throttle time. And I think there might even be some strategy at play tonight, Peter. I was looking at the fuel mileage that the league admin said we have, and it's going to be real close for these guys trying to one-stop it. But depending on track conditions, may be possible. So that's going to be something to look out for tonight here at Indy.
Yeah, absolutely. And how many races have we seen come down to strategy this season here in the Sim Racers Club Premier Series? I mean, going all the way back to Daytona to kick off the season, we saw fuel strategy at Daytona in the duels. Might we see something similar here tonight in the Gunskins.com Brickyard 200, And of course, make sure to check out our sponsor here tonight, Gunskins.com. They have wraps for your weaponry. Really, really cool to see their vinyl wraps that they have for their weaponry in all different types of colors. Can peel them off, change them out, and do all different types of things. It is really, really cool. You can see the racetrack right there. We're coming to a close here on the practice session, just about 3 minutes left, but all eyes are on the point standings because we are closing in, Andre. Just 4 races to go entering tonight to make it into the playoff round of 12, which starts on August 25th. It is going to be really interesting to see because tonight, the point standings, you got, of course, Greg Evans, Scott Eckrich, and Tyler Seville up near the top. But then a little bit further back, you got drivers like Adam Jersky, Michael Krobach, AJ Digby, Steve Yanish, Grant Brown. Those drivers starting to feel a little bit uncomfortable because then you have drivers like Alan Young, John Eckhart on the outside looking in. It is going to be a fight all the way to the cutoff for the round of 12 at Daytona in just a few weeks' time.
Absolutely. We talked last week quite a bit about how we're getting closer and closer to the playoffs, and every week the sand just runs out a little bit more in that hourglass, and mistakes become more costly. And those drivers that you mentioned being right there on the edge, that's got to kind of rattle up the nerves a little bit. Got to make them kind of tense going into tonight, especially at a track so demanding, so tough. It's going to be 80 laps that they're going to have to be perfect here. And if they're not perfect, well, they're going to dig themselves into a points hole that as the weeks go on, it's going to be harder and harder to get out of. So now is the time for make or break. You got to go out there. You got to show up. And a lot of these drivers are going to be giving it absolutely everything they can to make sure that they make that round of 12.
The time is definitely ticking away, as you said. Of course, last week, however, we saw Drew Carroll pick up his first pole of the season, as well as his second win of the season. He didn't even lead the first lap, and by the end of the race, he was able to get the lead on the final lap. It was absolutely awesome to see last week in the Famucci Ware 150 at New Hampshire, folks. If you did not see that one, definitely one worth going back and watching. In fact, it has been the past 7 days on 3Wide TV, going back to last week's Famucci Ware 150 at New Hampshire. The past 7 days have been absolutely awesome. If you have not watched any of the races here on 3Wide TV the past week, you've been missing out. You've been missing some absolutely awesome, crazy, zany finishes. And of course, the Sim Racers Club always putting on a show each and every week for the fans that we have in the chat here tonight. In fact, we only so far have had one person active in the chat, and that is the Joy of Driving, saying Go Graphics, LC Motorsports, and Loud Pedal Motorsports. Of course, the Joy of Driving have sponsored some of the races here in the Sim Racers Club. We really do appreciate them joining us in the chat here tonight. Always rooting on the Graphics, LC Motorsports, and Loud Pedal Motorsports as well. And it always is great to see you guys all in the chat. We really do appreciate each and every one of you stopping by as we close in on 1,000 subscribers. Don't know if you saw the little note that we had at the top of the show, but we're down to just 55 more subscribers till we hit that magic 1,000 mark. So we really do appreciate you guys sharing the link on Facebook and with all of your friends and Twitter and all that good stuff. We, like I said, really do appreciate it because there's no place better than watching these drivers here, Andre, in the Sim Racers Club Premier Series. They are stellar.
I'd have to agree there. We've had some fantastic races this year. A lot of caution-free races where these guys have really shown exactly how talented they are at these tough tracks. And right now, qualifying is finally rolling out of pit road. We've got drivers such as Brian Yazik and Michael Krobach rolling out right away. Maybe some other drivers waiting a little bit longer, seeing how the track conditions change. It's 10 minutes of qualifying and about a 48 to 49 second lap, give or take. Well, actually 51 second lap. So they got some time to play with if they're going to go out there and turn 2 laps, maybe wait for some overcast and see how that goes. But a lot of drivers making their way out to the track, and now's the time to try to get some decent track position early on in this event.
Yeah, you see the number 84 there of Woody Mahan working his way down the backstretch and off towards turn number 3 here. That's right. 4 very distinct corners here around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway as he now works his way through the short chute here and off into turn number 4. It's important to get a good run out of turn number 4 and turn number 2 here at Indianapolis in order to get a good lap time because, Andre, those are the corners where it leads on to a very long straightaway. If you don't work your way out of turn number 4 or turn number 2 very well, it is definitely going to hurt that lap time.
Yeah, it's a mistake that can definitely cost you a lot. It doesn't sound like a lot, coming out of the corner at 175 versus 177. But that 2 extra mile an hour is something that's going to carry all the way down the straightaway. And of course, these are some of the longest straightaways on an oval circuit that we're gonna see this season. So you want to make sure that you get a good run out. A lot of drivers taking the slow in, fast out approach. And of course, even at turns 3 and 1 are pretty important to get into those corners fast. Because if you don't get a good exit out of that corner, you get a bad angle into the next set of corners, well, that's just going to mess you up for your exit. And it's going to be very difficult to correct that. So definitely a track where you got to be on the ball everywhere you go. Not really any room for error when you go into these sweeping corners here. And of course, with the straightaways being what they are, once we get more cars out on track and the race gets underway, we are probably going to see quite a bit of drafting, maybe a little bit of bump drafting, maybe some side drafting for sure, because the aero is going to be incredibly important when you're spending so much time in a straight line.
Yeah, of course, we don't often talk about the package that these cars run. We do it occasionally, but here at Indianapolis, it's very, very critical. If you're running that low horsepower package that they run nowadays, the high downforce package, drafting will be extremely important down these long straightaways, and we'll see the field stay relatively close together because of it. Now, it does make it very difficult in these flat corners to carry all that momentum if you're tucked up behind another car. I saw a couple drivers try that in practice with mixed results, so hopefully we will see some good racing here tonight with this package. As you look at the number 69 of Adam Jersky, I have my eyes on the number 9 machine of Jeff Ward. Was the fastest driver in the practice session. Not going to go top of the boards right now. It is Scott Eckrich has currently topped the leaderboard with a 51.298. Jeff Ward just missing his practice time by about 0.03 of a second. But how about Scott Eckrich? He's won so many races this season. He picked up a 1/10 of a second in qualifying to be top of the scoring pile.
Yeah, and that is quite the improvement. Somewhere he found that extra 10th, and it's going to make quite a bit of difference as only a few drivers have yet to go out and make their way around the track. Among them, Johnny Avila, a driver who's been very competitive all season long. And kind of surprised to see him not going out there quite yet. Of course, we have only elapsed about half of our qualifying time. So, as I say that, I believe Johnny Avila just went ahead and turned a lap, if I am seeing this correctly. And can I find him? Yep, he is now currently being scored as 7th on the pile now. So he finally went out there, got a lap 51.629. Currently sitting in the top 10. We'll see if the second lap improves that. And that leaves only 6 drivers to go out and turn a lap. That's now 5, because we got Todd Kirkwood, Mark Myers, Digby, Stykes, and Larch who have yet to go out. But everybody else making their laps, and very close times here, I'm noticing, Peter. I mean, the pole sitter, 51.2. You mentioned he found that extra 10th. Behind him, look at how close this is. Jeff Ward with a 51.3. You got Thomas George with a 51.4. Just a couple tenths separating the top 5. And then back there, you got a whole slew of drivers in the 51.6 range. So, man, when you add how close these guys are in pace with the package keeping them together, this is going to be one heck of a race, and these cars are going to struggle to get away from each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you go from Will Worsler, who's currently in the 5th position. You go all the way back to Michael Krobach in 16th, and they're just separated by just under 0.2 of a second. So that just shows you that the mid-pack has some severe compression here tonight, and it should be good for the competition. I'm sure we'll see some great racing as we always do. We're watching the number 85, Gordon Digby, currently 22nd out there on the racetrack. There is the number 3, Michael Larch, hustling it onto the front stretch. I think he has already turned a qualifying lap time. We'll see if he can pick it up on this particular lap, as you can see some blinking in and out there for Gordon Digby. He did pick it up on lap number 2, but he will stay in 22nd. Michael Larch will stay in 19th in the number 3 machine, so no improvement on lap number 2. That just leaves Mark Myers and Todd Kirkwood, the only 2 drivers to not take time here, as we are quickly running out of time here in the qualifying session. Just about 3 minutes or so to go, but I don't expect to see any of these drivers really improving on their lap time. And another thing I was watching, Andre, was the track temperature and the track surface that they have here. Now, here in the Sim Racers Club Premier Series, they run 2 times time compression. So the clock is ticking by, you can see it right there, it's 11:57:58 a.m. now, and that second counter on the far right is going up twice as fast as it normally does in reality. So that track temperature is going to heat up here pretty quickly, Andre, and it might make this racetrack very slick. But going back to your topic earlier about the possibility of a little bit of fuel strategy coming into play, the slicker the racetrack is, the less throttle you're going to use. The less throttle you're going to use, obviously, the less fuel you're going to burn. Can we see some of these drivers stretch it to that halfway mark? That is going to be the key question, because we have seen lots of green flag races this season. You mentioned that a little while ago. Think back to Charlotte Motor Speedway, the longest race of the season, 300 miles, no cautions. Extremely impressive. Then Nashville, when we went to Nashville Super Speedway for the first time in over 10 years here in the Premier Series, that race went caution-free. So might we see another caution-free race here at Indianapolis? It very well could happen here tonight, and if so, fuel strategy will indeed come into play, I'm sure.
Absolutely. The race being 80 laps long, and from our understanding, the drivers can go anywhere between 37 to 40, depending on, like you mentioned, track conditions and how much throttle they're going to have to use through these corners. So it's going to be a risk. Obviously, no strategy is going to be 100%, but it's something to keep in your mind if you're a driver and you know that, yeah, it's really close, but it might be possible, because if you're that one guy who's been saving longer than everybody else and you're the one guy that can make it, well, that's going to be all the difference, especially as we get closer to these playoffs. Wins are going to mean a lot more. Points are going to mean a lot more. And so you got to be thinking that maybe if you can't get somebody on speed, get them on strategy. So it's going to be interesting to see. But you mentioned maybe having this race go caution-free. Well, I'm going to have to bet against you, Peter. I think this is going to be not exactly a demolition derby, but I think it's going to be difficult to keep it caution-free, is what I'll say, because we mentioned the package, how close these cars are going to be together. It's going to be a lot of drafting. And not only that, but sometimes with this aero package, you get a car up alongside one another, and the cars kind of bring each other in. The aero kind of draws them together, and that almost never ends well. It's really tough to make a race here at Indianapolis caution-free. But if anybody can do it, I would say it is this group of guys, because they are immensely talented, and I'm very curious to see how they handle the, we'll call it the, I was going to make a joke about how it's not the tricky triangle, but some of these corners actually were remodeled into Indianapolis, into Pocono, so that's something to think about. But looks like qualifying has about wrapped up. We have 20 seconds left on the grid, and only 2 drivers have failed to turn a lap. That's Mark Myers and Todd Kirkwood. Those 2 bottom of the scoring pylon, no time posted, and I do not see them on track, so I believe they're going to opt to start in the back, which could be the play, Peter. I mean, again, with this aero package, everybody being really close together, if something happens, you don't want to be in the middle of it. If you're a little bit further back, give yourself more time to react. That is honestly a very smart play. So props to them if that's what they're doing. Everybody else, having completed their laps, they are just waiting patiently for these last 10 seconds to click down. Then we're going to be on our starting grid here at Indianapolis.
Yeah, we'll see if we can bring up that starting grid here for you in the Gunskins.com 200 here at the Brickyard Indianapolis Motor Speedway in Speedway, Indiana. And they will be right here. Let's see. The pace truck has appeared on the starting grid here, right on the front stretch, just across the yard of bricks. It is really a good sight to see all of these cars start to get lined up out there. Richard Fletcher in the chat saying good luck all sitting this one out up in Wisconsin this week. Nikki Warser saying good evening, guys. Good evening, Nikki. Hope that you're doing a-okay. And there is the starting lineup as you see a great look of the pavilion, the Pagoda Pavilion. There we go. Scott Eckrich picking up another pole in the number 70 machine. Jeff Ward, who has been very fast since his introduction here in the Sim Racers Club Premier Series, will be starting alongside him. Thomas George, Tyler Seville on row number 2. Keep an eye out for the number 88 machine here tonight. Will Warser, Drew Carroll, last week's race winner in the 27, will be starting in 6th. Craig Stykes, Brian Yazik on row number 4, with Johnny Avila and Adam Jersky rounding out your top 10.
Looking behind them, you got AJ Digby in P11 alongside Troy Haight. Woody Mahan and John Eckert are going to make up the next row. Behind them, Greg Evans in the number 2. Michael Krobach alongside him. Alan Young, number 24, alongside Grant Brown. And then rounding out your top 20, if the graphic swaps over. Rounding out your top 20 is going to be Michael Larch and Kevin Stone.
Corey Benton, Gordon Digby on row number 11, while rounding out your 24 car field here tonight, Mark Myers in the 04 and Todd Kirkwood in the number 40 machine. As the pace truck starts to roll here on the front stretch, these drivers will figure out what the pace speed is here so they can go down pit road at the accurate speed. You see everyone going across the yard of bricks here through the back half of the field. Some great looking cars in the field here tonight. In fact, one good looking car that isn't in the field here tonight, that would be the number 41 machine of Tim Knott, who unfortunately in that number 41 machine, due to causing 2 cautions last week at New Hampshire Motor Speedway in the Famucci Ware 150, he is having to sit out here tonight, which is a big bummer. Of course, his sponsor, Gunskins.com. Usually we see Gunskins on that car quite a bit. Not represented by him, although Kevin Stone now is sporting a Gunskins machine. Last week we saw him in the Famucci Ware number 17, so great to see that. John Eckhart also sponsored by Gunskins this week. So we have a couple, just not Tim Knott. Unfortunately, having those 2 cautions last week at New Hampshire there, Andre.
Absolutely, and man, this field is gonna be hungry here as we are rolling into what I believe to be turn 3. It's gonna be one of the longer pace laps of the season, very long pace lap, especially for an oval circuit, but these drivers heavily anticipating that pace truck making that hard left turn, and once he does, it's gonna be pandemonium. We're gonna see if Scott Eckrich can hold on to that pole position that he has claimed, if he can get out front, or if maybe Jeff Ward in that number 9 can get the jump. Of course, he was very strong last week, and look forward to see him capitalize on that momentum. But here we go. Pace truck gonna make that left-hand turn. There he goes, a little bit late. And the green flag in the flagman's hand. And they got a ways to go here. There they go. Green flag is out. 70 car standing right alongside Jeff Ward in the number 9. Scott Eckrich, a little bit of help from the 88, that inside row getting a great start. And into turn 1, Eckrich is clear into the lead. He's got Thomas George in tow.
Yeah, great start there by the number 70. I'm not surprised. Thomas George also great start for him to get around Jeff Ward. So the number 9 slides back to 3rd just like that. But they're side by side. The Will Warser teammates Will Worcer racing teammates, I should say, of Tyler Seville and Will Worcer were side by side, but now Drew Carroll giving a huge push to the Arch Telecom number 11 as they go off into turn number 3. So move Drew Carroll, last week's race winner, now up inside the top 5. But as I say that, Will Worcer gets a good run down there on the bottom side of turn number 3. Coming back at him as they get tight, almost contact between the 29 and the 27. Worsler is loose down there on the rumble strips. He might lose a lot of positions as they're 3 wide down the front stretch.
And that is the gamble that these drivers make when they navigate the turns here at Indy. There is a little bit of grip on the bottom that isn't there in the other lanes. But if you go too low, then you hit those rumble strips that you mentioned, and you lose all that grip, and suddenly you got to get out of the throttle and hope that everybody behind you is able to get around you on the high side without making contact and without forcing you down any lower. So it was an unfortunate mistake from Will Worsler in 29, but he was able to recover himself and get going. He's still inside the top 10, so plenty of time to get back up there and make another charge at it. Although, as we say that, he is side by side with the number 2, Greg Evans, a driver who, after last week, was a little bit frustrated with the way that race turned out. A little bit of contact between him and some other drivers that kind of got under his skin. You got to think maybe he's driving a little bit more motivated this week, trying to get another win here this season, and definitely seems to have the speed to do it. He is passing cars, and he's making it look easy. It's not easy, but he's making it look that way as he is continuing to close in on the car ahead. And right here on your screen, there's a side-by-side battle. That is Adam Jersky in the number 69, and there's that little run you can get on the bottom. That was a good example of it by the number 69. There's just this little strip of grip that you can really get the car to rotate with, but it's a fine line. You got to be careful down there, Peter.
Yeah, the number 17 of Kevin Stone, he's going to duck back in line, but he had a handful coming out of turn number 2 as we have this side-by-side action. Grant Brown in the Joy of Driving machine trying to get around Woody Mahan. Looks like Grant will pull off that pass coming out of turn number 3. They're all pretty much single file up in front of this little group, but as I say that, they are now single file throughout the entire field here. Now coming to lap number 4, Scott Eckert continuing to lead. Thomas George settling in second. Jeff Ward in third. Alex Seville and Drew Carroll rounding out your top 5. Johnny Avila has made a good start. He started that back in the 9th position. Now he is up to 6th spot. One driver who I was surprised, Andre, that did not get a good qualifying run was last year's pole sitter here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. That is the number 2 machine of Greg Evans, of course, your reigning series champion here in the Sim Racers Club Premier Series. He's got himself from 15th up to 9th here in just a couple of laps. And Greg Evans right there didn't have a good qualifying run last week at New Hampshire Motor Speedway either. So here tonight, kind of on the back foot early. But like you said there, Andre, it's a long race. There is plenty of time for this race to play out, as it seems like everyone, again, still single file. But I'm just wondering, we have Scott Eckridge up there leading this field, Andre. He's in a position where he doesn't really have an opportunity to save fuel with the draft. Some of these drivers a little bit further back in the pack, even if you're like up there inside the top 5, like Drew Carroll, you probably have an opportunity to just lift off the throttle just a little bit down on the straightaways and maybe save a little bit of fuel. And if this race does end up being a fuel mileage race, that could be extremely important.
Yeah, sometimes being the leader actually isn't the preferred position. In this situation, Scott Eckridge is really just lending a helping hand to the competition behind him, giving them his draft and allowing them to save that fuel, get off the throttle a little bit on the straightaways, like you said, maybe roll into the throttle a little bit later in the corners, and then use that draft to close back in on the straightaways. So these drivers a little bit further back, they may have an advantage, and I could see this race being a strategy race, as everybody, for the most part, up front has gone single file. We've got a little bit of double file a little bit further back in the pack, but most of this field is single file. Everybody's fairly calm at the moment, and if the racing continues like this and everybody's content where they're at, this could very easily stay green. And if that happens, that is when things get really interesting.
That is for sure. We do have a little bit of side-by-side racing a little bit further back in the pack between Craig Stykes and Michael Larch. That is a battle right now for the 17th position. Looks like Craig Stykes, who is returning here to the Sim Racers Club Premier Series, running the custom paints and diecast machine. He will take that spot, from Michael Larch, move himself up to 17th. But you can see right there, bottom right-hand corner of your screen, a little bit of information, a little bit of added information than what you're typically used to here on 3-Wide TV. So we will be pulling that up here on Focus Drivers. Right now focusing the information on the number 70 of Scott Eckridge, who is your current race leader at the front of the field by just about a half second as they run, assuming quarter of a second as they run over Thomas J. George, but still plenty of racing time to go. We got a good battle breaking out just outside the top 10 between Grant Brown, Michael Krobach, and John Eckhart. They sort things out, so move Grant Brown up to 14th, Krobach up to 15th, and John Eckhart, he's going to slide back to the 16th position in his Gunskins machine. And folks, make sure you check out gunskins.com here tonight before you leave here on the channel. If you have a rifle or a pistol or something like that, you want to put a skin on it, well, Gunskins is the place to check out. But all single file as they run right now inside the top 10. Let's focus on a driver who put together a good run last week at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway after some late race craziness, that being the number 24 machine of Alan Young. And I'll tell you what, the Young Gun Creations number 24 machine, there he is running right behind the number 28 of Troy Haight. He needed a good run last week at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. We talked about the fact that he was extremely fast there 1 year ago and was just trying to get that good run as he gets a good run, speaking of good runs, out of turn number 4 to motor on by Troy Haight. At least that's what it appears like as they go across the yard of bricks right there. But Alan Young walked away with the top 5 last week, and hoping that will springboard him here for the remainder of the season, Andre.
Absolutely. It would be a huge momentum builder if he could capitalize on this run that he's having today. And momentum always important in a sport like stock car racing. So, man, this battle may be a little bit more for just position than just position, but actually for the momentum and the confidence going forward, it's going to be fun to watch. We got a little bit of connection issues there from the car behind, linking out a little bit there. That's a scary thing to see in your mirror. Sometimes that car disappears and you don't know where it's going to come back, but luckily things seem to have stabled out, which is always good to see. But yeah, a lot of calm racing so far throughout the pack. And as I say that, here goes Drew Carroll. He's making a move on the number 11, giving him a little bit of a side draft down this straightaway. Contact as they go into the corner. He's going to take that low line right against the rumble strips, unable to hold it quite as much as he would have liked. They're going to stay side by side through turn 2. The 63 behind them. Johnny Avila kind of playing, I would say, the decider in this battle. He's able to kind of lend his draft and his push to whoever he chooses to, and it looks like right now he's going to give a shove to the number 11. He's going to push him clear of Carroll, which kind of helps both of them in that situation. So now the 11 is free from the competition behind, and the 63 is up 1 spot, and that's going to put him finally inside the top 5. Avila has been kind of playing the long game here, Peter. You mentioned he didn't get the best qualifying effort. He was back in 9th when this race kicked off, and now here on lap 11, as we cross the line to take lap 11, he is inside the top 5. So that 63 machine is fast. And I got to wonder, is everybody around him more concerned with saving, or are they giving it their all, and this 63 is just flat out faster than them? Because if that's the case, that is crazy, the pace that he has right now. As the 11 is going to go side by side ahead of him, which is another thing that Avila wants to see. He wants these cars to battle. This is the exact situation that allowed him to get around Carroll, and if he plays his cards right here, this is going to be another situation where he can help to get around the number 88. Here he goes with a push to the 11 into turn 3. He's going to do it again. Ooh, a little bit sideways going into the corner. Thomas George fighting back on the high side. What is he going to be able to do through turn 4? Whoa, and then we almost had 2 wide, 2 rows deep as the number 14, AJ Digby, stuck his nose in on the 27. Just when I said things were getting a little bit calm, Peter, these drivers were here to prove me wrong. This is getting a little intense now.
Yeah, and that all kicked off when Jeff Ward got to the inside of Thomas J. George. So we also have a new second-place driver up at the front of the field. In fact, he has run down your race leader, but Brian Yazik now to the inside of A.J. Digby, and Drew Carroll now to the inside of Thomas George. This is a little bit of a hornet's nest right now as Drew Carroll and Thomas George, I think they might have just touched coming out of turn number 2. The 27 and the number 88 getting really close, and now A.J. Digby's got a huge run. Is Digby going to take him 3 wide? Carroll's going to have to back out here in the number 27 machine. He does. Look like Thomas George might have backed out too, but Digby there going 2 spots in one corner, although Drew Carroll's now fighting back to the inside. I'm sure Drew Carroll will probably not be too kind to A.J. Digby's move there. That's a little bit early to be making these moves, but track position here is quite important. Now, Thomas George getting a little bit of help to Drew Carroll as they go across the yard of bricks.
And I just want to point out what a masterful, contact between the 14 and the 88, but what a masterful move that was by Drew Carroll in that 27. When he pulled that crossover on the number 14, he kept his foot in the throttle as we have more contact between the 14 and the 88. The 14 is in the wall, 3 wide, and the 55 had to dive down to the apron. He was able to recover. A little bit of right side damage to the number 14. He's going to drop a few positions. I don't know. I think you're right, Peter. I think maybe A.J. Digby just getting a little too aggressive early on in this race. But, I mean, while it's early in the race, it is getting late in the season. So maybe that playing into his aggression early on. You can't fault a guy for trying to take every last inch of track that he can take. And we got more wall contact ahead of him. That's Will Worsler. He just got tight coming out of turn 4. Bounced it off the outside wall. He was able to gather it up. And I tell you what, if we had a Save of the Race award, I would say that's going to Will Worsler twice over. He got a little loose on the rumble strip earlier in the race, made a great save there and kept it going, bounced off the wall right there. I think a lot of other drivers might not have been able to keep a handle on that car. He was able to keep that thing pointed in the right direction, barely lost any time. So Will Worsler, a lot of car control out of that 29.
Yeah, that number 29 machine, some pretty heavy contact with the outside wall. There you see a replay of it up at the top of the screen. Just smacking that wall pretty darn hard out of turn number 4. Now, I want to see if we can also go back on that upper screen maybe and get another look at that A.J. Digby contact that we saw with him and I think the number 88 of Thomas George, because that one I think has a little bit of a story to it, and I think maybe a blimp cam, if we do have the 3-wide TV blimp flying here today, might be able to tell that tale. But we're watching this group of cars right now live on the racetrack. Michael Krobach, Troy Haight going side by side. All right, here we go. At the top of your screen, the number 88 machine, you'll see him right there, all the way down to the bottom side of the racetrack. And then he slides up. That's one of the things. He definitely hit the apron. But I don't know if that's one of the things where he felt like he was pushed down there, Andre. I mean, he was definitely as low as he could go on the racetrack, and A.J. Digby kind of pinched him down there. That's kind of a tough one to call. Definitely one that I'm sure A.J. Digby would be interested in going back to see for himself. That is for sure. Meanwhile, out there on the racetrack, this is Grant Brown, who's continuing his charge up through the field, racing with Michael Krobach in the number 72, thumbs up, cancer down. HPPsimulation.com Ford, of course, one of the Loud Pedal Motorsports machines. It looks like Grant Brown is actually going to slide back to the 13th spot as Craig Stykes now up to 12th, Adam Jersky in 11th. A.J. Digby slid back to 10th. But here we go. We got one more camera angle. This is on board with driver of the number 88 machine. You'll see him start to just move up. Hello, A.J. Digby. Goodbye, A.J. Digby. That's how quickly it happens here, even in slow motion at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Now, up at the front of the field, it's a little bit of a 3-horse race right now, with Scott Eckridge continuing to lead, Jeff Ward in second, Tyler Seville in the number 11, who has won multiple races. We got one car in the wall. Is that Craig Stykes in the wall? No, that's Troy Haight in the wall in the number 28 machine. Couldn't quite make out both of those drivers running black Chevrolets here tonight, and it looks like Haight here pulling it off the racetrack. Not sure what that was, whether or not that was contact induced or not, but that is not what Troy Haight wanted to see tonight.
Yeah, no, that is definitely not what he wanted to see. And I got to say, Peter, I think tire wear is starting to get to these guys. We are 18 laps into this event almost, and I'm noticing some drivers getting more and more tight through the corner. Although in that situation with the 28, I'm not exactly sure what happened there. He was down in the grass and shot back. I guess he got into the wall, pinged down into the grass, and then came back up. But again, I think tire wear is starting to play into these drivers' issues that they're having. Of course, this track being very flat, and it's diamond graded. So they graded this track with diamonds. They put really tiny grooves into the track, and it eats away at tires like no others. We go on board with Troy Haight. You can see he just got into the wall a little bit there. That bounced him down into the grass. He was able to hang on to it, but then he had a really bad corner entry. Obviously, entering down in the grass is never where you want to be, and that put him up in the outside wall pretty hard. Everybody able to navigate around him, no problem, and he made the probably smart decision to get down to that pit road access road and bring that thing to his stall to get some of that damage beat out of the bodywork and see if he can get out there. I'm hearing that maybe he has some hardware issues with his steering wheel. That could be a possibility. That's what our producer's saying on our ear. But this battle for the lead's kind of heating up here, Peter. I'm looking on our screen here, and we got the number 70 only about half a car length ahead of the number 9, and the number 11, Tyler Seville. That's a driver who we saw making some moves alongside that 63 a little bit further back in the pack. Now he has made his way up to the leaders. And I got to tell you, that number 11 has been looking good. Real smooth through the corners. Looks like he's got a lot of great throttle control on corner exit. And if either of these drivers in front of him slip up, if they open the door up even slightly, I think he's going to be there to pounce. So this is getting really interesting. We're about halfway through this fuel run. So these drivers dealing with some ill-handling cars, I'm sure. And Tyler Seville looking to capitalize on it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to mention. We're now at that about that halfway mark in the run, which means these drivers will look down, they'll see how much fuel they've used from the drop of the green flag, and maybe some of them will adjust their strategies accordingly. Because this is one of the racetracks that is actually one of the easier racetracks to save fuel at, because you actually do use some brake here. We'll see if we can bring up a graphic that shows the speed of these leaders down the front stretch, but they're near on 190 miles an hour before they get on the brakes, down to 152. So they drop about 40 miles an hour in the corner, and the more you use the brake, the less fuel you save. I mean, lift and coast is important in any form of motorsport to save a little bit of fuel, and I'm sure some of these drivers are using that. Here comes Jeff Ward, though. He's got a huge run, but he backs out of it. I thought he was going to look to the inside there of Scott Eckrich. I wonder if Jeff Ward is using this opportunity to save fuel, because if I was Jeff Ward with that run that I just got on the number 70 of Eckrich, I would have probably looked to the inside for the race lead, but Jeff Ward said, no, I'm just going to hang out here behind Scott, and I think he's saving fuel. I think that's what he's doing. I could be 100% wrong here, but here comes Jeff Ward a little bit too late on the straightaway this time for him to do anything. But this is a great look here in the 3Y TV multicam, just showing you this battle for the race lead. Just looking around the racetrack right now, we have another couple of pockets of cars out there, but I wouldn't say any real battles for position that are anything greater than what we have right here on your screen, although Craig Stykes in the number 57 has made a pass on Adam Dursky, and he's about to make the move on AJ Digby side by side down the backstretch. So move Stykes into the top 10 on his return. I would have to think, Andre, that AJ Digby is really struggling with all that right side damage that he accumulated now probably about 5 laps ago.
Absolutely. You know, we talked at the top of the broadcast about how important the aero is here. And when you bounce it off the wall like that, you're just hurting your own aero. And that car is going to start handling worse and worse the more damage you give it. And of course, because we're turning left, the right side of the car is where most of the air is going. So you want that side of your car to be clean. And unfortunately for Digby, he has quite substantial damage to the right side of that machine. So it's going to be a struggle. Luckily for him, we are getting closer to this pit sequence, and once he comes in under green, he'll have at least a few seconds to try to get some of that damage beat out, which will help it and make that car feel a little bit better. But that's the price you pay. Sometimes you want to get aggressive. You want to try to make moves early on in the event. But if you make mistakes, if something happens, if you beat your car up a little bit too quick, then that's something you're going to have to deal with. You're going to have to deal with the fallout of that for the rest of the race. And that is a lesson that Digby has learned the hard way. But to give him a little bit of credit, for as beat up as that car is on the right-hand side, he's not doing a bad job of wheeling that thing around. He is racing in and around these guys, doing his best to play a little bit of defense here to keep from falling too far back. And ever since those incidents earlier, he's pretty much kept it clean. He's ran his line. He's been doing what he needs to do as a driver to make sure that he's there at the end. And as I say that, a little bit of contact. Okay, well, I guess I should probably just stop saying things, Peter, because whenever I do, the opposite happens.
Yeah, and this is kind of a very similar deal from what we saw earlier with AJ Digby. The 15 of Grant Brown was all the way below the white line again, and Digby continued to come down the racetrack, really pinching him. They laid on each other. This time, however, Digby able to avoid any subsequent contact with the outside wall, but that number 14 is extremely hurt. Now, up at the front of the field, we have missed a pass for the second position. That's right, Tyler Seville in the number 11 just worked his way around the number 9 of Jeff Ward. Not exactly sure what Jeff Ward was doing. Not sure if he had to lift to avoid the outside wall, but he just pulled to the inside of the racetrack on the front stretch, and going across the yard of bricks, Tyler Seville just motored around the high line and moved himself up into second. So great start here for Tyler Seville. Started in fourth, now running in the second position. Here is the 3-wide TV multicam look. Watch Jeff Ward. He's up there. It seems like he gets a decent enough run coming out of turn number 4, but he just kind of lifts and lets Tyler Seville go around him. So that's a little bit of an interesting move. Again, wonder if Jeff Ward is thinking about maybe saving fuel in that number 9 machine and said, you know what? The best way to save fuel is not behind one car, but to be behind 2 cars. As we have a pass now for the 4th position, Greg Evans just passed Johnny Avila in a very similar situation. Johnny Avila seemed to let out of the throttle coming out of turn number 4. So maybe he's thinking about fuel mileage here tonight. AJ Digby, on the other hand, not thinking about fuel mileage. He's thinking about getting his number 14 high flow machine repaired. That's probably what's bringing him onto pit road here on lap number 25 as we reach around the 1/3 race distance here in tonight's Gunskins.com 200 here on 3-wide TV. As we have this battle, this is the number 88, Thomas J. George on the high line, and on the inside groove, that is Will Worsler. Worsler has some damage from some right side contact with the outside wall. Thomas George appears to maybe have a sliver of damage on the number 88 snap-on machine, but you can see Will Worsler there appeared to be a little bit more crippled down the backstretch with the damage that he has. As, Will Worsler coming to pit road this time. Maybe he's thinking about that damage that he has as well, Andre.
Well, and we talked a lot about how these drivers could potentially one-stop the race, but this is the alternative. This is the other option that the drivers have going into tonight. If they pit now, that's going to put them pitting again somewhere around, let's say, lap 50 to lap 60, and that's going to give them a good 20-lap run to the end or so on fresh tires. And they're going to be making up a lot of time on these fresh tires versus the drivers who are trying to stretch it to that 40-lap mark. And honestly, I'm no mathematician. I don't know the exact lap times they're running, and I don't know how much they're going to gain on these fresh tires. But there are certain tracks and certain circumstances where if the race stays green, 2 stops is actually faster than 1 just because of how much faster your lap times are on fresh tires. It starts to outweigh the amount of time you lose going down pit road as the drivers that stay out more and more time as the race goes on. So could be interesting. I'm not sure which strategy is going to be better. I would say if it stays green, maybe these drivers like Worsler and the other driver who came out, Digby, they're onto something here maybe with this early pit.
Yeah, they very well might be, and they're going to come out onto the racetrack together, the 14 and the number 29. They will stay on the lead lap, courtesy of the fact that Indianapolis Motor Speedway is 2.5 miles in length, and in doing so, you can come down pit road without losing that lap, as we see Thomas George doing the same in the Snap-on Chevrolet. Scott Eckridge up at the front of the field in the Amsoil machine continues to stay out with Tyler Seville and Jeff Ward. But going back to your question, it was kind of a question, about how much time are they losing? Well, the fastest lap of the race here tonight was turned by Johnny Avila, a 51.553 second lap time. They are now 3 seconds slower than that. Now, granted, Avila's lap time will be in a fairly sizable pack where there was plenty of draft, but nonetheless, a 51.553, we'll see what kind of lap times AJ Digby is running out there by himself. Looks like last time by it was a 52.998, so that's still 2 full seconds faster than what your race leaders are running right now, as we have a group of cars coming down pit road. Drew Carroll, Craig Sykes, John Eckhart, Michael Krobach, Kevin Stone, they all just came down pit road, so they will head back out there onto the racetrack. That group of drivers running just kind of on the back half of the top 10 here. But will that play the hand of the top three? No, your top three continue to stay out here, led by Scott Eckrich, Seville Ward. Now Johnny Avila is in fourth. Greg Evans coming down pit road in the number 2 machine. Adam Jersky, Michael Larch joining him. And so I think what we're starting to see here, a bit surprisingly, I might add, is definitely some of these drivers succumbing to that 2 pit stop strategy.
Yeah, a lot more drivers than I expected, but I think you're right. I think this does force the hand of the top three, just not in the way that you're thinking. I think this actually locks the top three into that one-stop strategy. If they pit now and they take a two-stop, guaranteed two-stop, they've already lost a ton of time to drivers like AJ Digby and Will Worsler, who, mind you, when they came out of pit road, they were only a little ways ahead of our leader on the lead lap. And now, if you look up to see them, they're almost an entire straightaway away in just a few laps. That's how much time they have gained on those fresher tires. So if those drivers in the lead right now, that lead pack was to come down pit road, that would be catastrophic, potentially race ending. I mean, it would be hard to come back from losing a quarter of a lap or more and having to come down pit road with everybody else. So it's going to be interesting to see how they choose to play this out. I think the number 2, Greg Evans, he made a good choice going with this two-stop because looking at his lap times, he was not closing in on the leaders. He was only kind of riding with them at the exact same pace. And coming in a few laps sooner, that's going to gain him quite a bit of time. If you can't get him on speed, get him on strategy. However, the number 11, Tyler Seville, he has dropped back from this lead pack, and he has said over the radio that he is going to be pitting this time by. So he's going to drop down to the apron. There he goes down to pit road, and that is going to leave 2 leaders right now, the number 9 of Jeff Ward and, of course, the number 70 of Scott Eckrich, who have yet to pit. That is interesting because that's one of the top 3 that I thought was locked into the one-stop strategy. He made his way down pit road a few laps soon.
So now all eyes will be on Scott Eckrich and Jeff Ward. When will they come down pit road? Alan Young in the number 24 machine. He's going to get himself up to third. But Jeff Ward in the number 9 machine, man, almost making contact with the outside wall there, coming out of turn number 2 onto the backstretch as he just got passed by one of the Gunskins.com machine. That is John Eckhart right there in the number 45 machine. He will try and unlap himself here in just a moment here. But you can see that lap differential amongst kind of your leaders kind of at the top of the screen, as well as the number 9 machine right there, Jeff Ward. Last time by ran a 55.229, and he says, you know what, I'm coming down pit road right here. So the number 9 and the number 70. Now, a much better entry onto pit road for the number 9 machine of Jeff Ward here, Andre. But the big question is maybe beating, because he got such a good entry, closed up so much time. We'll have to make sure that that number 9 does not get nabbed first beating. Now, Alan Young, the number 24 machine, who had such a good run last week at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway, has taken the lead of the Gunskins.com 200 here. Is he going to be the one lone driver to try that one-stop strategy? Because every single other driver in the entire field, as Gordon Digby proves me right, because I was about to go back on that and say Gordon Digby hadn't pitted yet, but Gordon Digby's on pit road right now. So we're just waiting, Andre, on Alan Young to come to his pit crew.
Yeah, I got to admit, I'm a little surprised. I thought the one-stop strategy might be a little more tempting for these guys, but this is one experienced group of racers, and I guess they know the risk that strategy imposes, and they decided, you know what, getting this close to the playoffs, maybe we don't run that risk. Maybe we don't try and run out of gas with 1 lap remaining in the race, or potentially put ourselves at any unneeded risk. So a lot of drivers just going ahead and taking their 2-stop. If they pitted around lap 30, that's going to put them pitting again around lap 60 or 70. They'll have a little bit of leeway choosing when they want to pit. How long do they want to be on the fresher tires? But yeah, all eyes, like you said, on Alan Young, the one driver who is yet to come down pit road. And I'm trying to find him on my spectator cam. There he is. And there he goes across the radio, Peter. 24 is going to be coming down pit road this time, and that is going to hand the lead, it would appear, to Drew Carroll in the number 27, who was one of the first drivers to come down pit road.
Yeah, so that number 27 machine, he pitted 5 laps ago. Greg Evans in the number 2 machine is just a little bit, about 4 seconds, I think, behind that number 27 machine. He pitted, you saw the graphic just a little while ago. He pitted a couple of laps after him. Evans battling with Thomas George right now for that spot. Looks like, sure enough, Evans will take that spot away from Thomas George. Tyler Seville also trying to sneak his way on through. Scott Eckridge quickly closing in on that battle for what will be second position. Eckridge finds himself about 5 seconds behind Drew Carroll as they run. Jeff Ward is another 8 to 9 tenths of a second back behind him. So some interesting different strategies on tires. But one of these things here, Andre, is if you're one of these drivers like Greg Evans, like Tyler Seville, like Thomas George, slightly older tires than Scott Eckridge, you're going to have to do all you can to try and keep that number 70 behind you.
You absolutely are. You're going to have to play a lot of defense here, and defense is not at this track, because once the tires wear, it gets so hard to hold the bottom. Your car just wants to slide up the track. That is where it naturally wants to go. That's where the momentum is taking you. When your tires don't have the grip to prevent that, that is where you're going. So when drivers that have a little bit fresher tires are able to get around that bottom line, there's almost nothing you can do about it. So it's going to be a tall order for these drivers to play the defense that's going to be required once they really come together here and these tires start to level out. But it's going to be quite a show, and I'm really surprised at how much the running order really was shaken up by that pit sequence. I mean, everybody pretty much taking the same two-stop strategy. It's just a matter of what lap did they pit on. And here we are with Greg Evans in second, Drew Carroll in the lead, Tyler Seville in third, and the guy who was leading pretty much the entire race up until then, Scott Eckridge, he's in fourth. Jeff Ward barely hanging on to the top 5 there. Thomas George in sixth. And I would say a big winner in all that, Craig Stykes. He's up there in seventh. I believe he gained a few positions from that. And even Will Worsler is up a spot. He's up into 8th. He was running 9th, I believe, when he came in. So a lot of shakeup from that pit sequence. And I think we're going to see another shakeup when we get into the second one.
Yeah, we're closing in on the halfway mark as Tyler Seville now looking to the inside of the number 2 machine of Greg Evans. That will be the battle right now for the second position. Scott Eckridge has also showed up on their doorstep, as well as the number 9 machine of Jeff Ward, who's rapidly closing in on this side-by-side battle for second as they work their way out of turn number 2. Will Scott Eckridge take them 3 wide? Tyler Seville says nobody. Eckridge now going to go to the middle and says, you know what, I'm just going to blast on by both of you guys. It's Jeff Ward giving him a little bit of help from behind in the number 9 machine. Ward now using the high line. That's the not preferred line to try and make the pass on Seville, but he makes it stick with those fresher tires. The difference between Scott Eckridge's and Tyler Seville's tires, just 1 lap. Same thing with Jeff Ward and Tyler Seville. Ward just has 1 lap pressure tires, and he made that look easy. The fall off that we're seeing out of these tires here, Andre, is pretty impressive. And just to kind of go to that point, we'll go to Drew Carroll and look at his lap times, because he has kind of been free and clear of a lot of the lap traffic. He's not been stuck in these battles up there at the front. His first lap after the pit stop was a 51.961. Lap later, 0.3 slower. Lap after that, another 0.2. Lap after that, another 10th. Then another 0.3. Then another 0.3. And then another half second 2 laps after that. So he's bleeding, in the fall-off realm. After about 4 or 5 laps, you're well over a second slower than your first lap out there. So it's one of those things where those drivers who just came off pit road a little bit sooner, a little bit more recently, they're going to have quite a bit more grip than those cars that don't. But so far, Drew Carroll holding on to a pretty decent advantage, but he is definitely getting caught right now. Last time by, Drew Carroll was 1 second slower than Scott Eckridge and Jeff Ward. Ward being the fastest car on the entire track as we close in on the halfway mark, I should say, here in the Gunskins.com 200 in just about 2.5 laps from now.
Absolutely, and you got to think our leader is starting to get a little bit nervous looking in that rearview mirror. The drivers behind him are about 1 second back, and like you mentioned, he was about 1 second slower than those guys. So within the lap, he's going to have some drivers challenging him for that lead. And his only saving grace is that we might have a battle breaking out between Tyler Seville, Jeff Ward, and Scott Eckridge. These 3 drivers, no strangers to each other. They've been kind of following each other all night long. And now they found themselves together again as they approach our leader. They're going to have to try to navigate around him and see who gets held up the least, who gets held up the most. That's going to be a very important factor in this battle for the lead. Scott Eckrich going down to the bottom, and he is going to effortlessly make that move right around the 27 for the lead. The 9 car is going to say, all right, you opened the door, but wait for me. I'm going to come with you. Now the 27 diving down low, thought about blocking Tyler Seville, but thought better of it. Probably a good decision there. That was probably about a 10-mile-an-hour speed differential there. I think if he had followed through with that block, that could have been not good for anybody. So good move by the 27. He dove back up the track, got out of the way. Now he's going to come across the line this time in 4th. And you mentioned, one lap makes a huge difference. And the 27 pitted about 5 laps before any of these guys. So a huge difference in tire there, and something that is going to plateau eventually. I mean, eventually the tires will even out, and he's not going to be at that big of a disadvantage. But until he gets to that point, he's going to have to continue to play defense, try to make sure that he can keep all the track position that he can, and just ride it out until he can get to that second pit sequence and see maybe he can try to pit on a different schedule than everybody else. This time he pitted a lot earlier, maybe pit a little bit later. Have to see what he does, how he decides to adapt to the other drivers and their strategies. Greg Evans back in 5th, so he's pretty much where he was before this pit sequence. He was running around in, I believe, 5th before that all went down. And now he's still in 5th, but he is closer. He's a lot closer. He has draft help from the number 27, and if he can use that draft, get around him, he might just barely get up to the leaders in time to keep their draft, which would be very important. The aero package here, like we said, you got to make sure you have some draft help. If you're on your own, the lap times are going to be quite a bit slower. So, and that's kind of what got him on that first run. Greg Evans had a fast car. He made a lot of passes early on, but by the time he got to the leaders, they were already gone. He couldn't get their draft. And together, those 3 cars were capable of much faster lap times than he was at the head of his pack. So it's been a struggle for the number 2, and he's kind of a prime example of why track position is so important here at Indianapolis. But he's done a great job working his way up through the field, and I definitely wouldn't count him out yet.
Yeah, you can see that that difference right there between Scott Eckrich and Greg Evans, with Evans being quite a bit slower than Scott Eckrich. That's what the red indicates under or next to Evans's name, and we'll see what that is like this time. And again, it is just about a half second between Eckrich's fast lap time up at the top of the leaderboard and Greg Evans, who currently sits in the 5th spot. Now about 2.5 seconds, now 3 seconds behind the race lead as that gap is growing rather rapidly. Jeff Ward in the number 9 machine, though, in tow of Scott Eckrich, your race leader, as they head through turn number 3 in the back half now of the Gunskins.com 200. Let's see if we can go through the fields and see if we can go catch on some of those drivers a little bit further back in the pack as well, as things continue to sort their way on out. Your race leader, Scott Eckrich, he's right where he started. In fact, right in front of the number 9 machine, Jeff Ward, exactly where he started. These 2 drivers, they pitted 11 laps ago and have some of the freshest tires in the field. Only Alan Young in the number 24 machine has fresher tires than these 2, but that is going to give them a fairly significant advantage as they continue to pull away. But so far, so good for the number 70, who has by far led the most laps here tonight at Indianapolis. Behind him is the number 9 machine of Jeff Ward. A similar boat for him. He just hasn't led as many laps as the number 70 of Scott Eckrich. Has a little bit of right front damage on the number 9 machine. The question is whether or not that's affecting him. But so far, so good for Jeff Ward, a newcomer here to the Sim Racers Club Premier Series. In 3rd position will be the number 11 machine of Tyler Seville in his Arch Telecom paint scheme. I love that kind of mint green that he has. Maybe you'd call it winter green. I don't know. Maybe that's a question for the chat. What would you call that color that Tyler Seville is running there on the Arch Telecom Toyota Camry? Wyatt Knight qualified up there in the 4th position, running in 3rd, has so far kept it off the wall, has 1 lap older tires than the 2 cars in front of him, but is hanging on to them for at least right now there, Andre.
And a little bit further back, you've got Drew Carroll, last week's winner in that number 27 machine. He has had a pretty good night tonight, running in and around the top 5. Unfortunately, on this pit sequence, just caught a little bit short on tire wear. You said the number 11 had 1 lap older tires. Well, Drew Carroll, a lot bigger disadvantage, just about 5 laps older tires, and it's showing his lap time starting to fall back. But he is holding off the likes of Greg Evans, who's right there behind him. So has a little bit of speed in that car and definitely a lot of race left to try and get up to those leaders. Behind him, you've got Greg Evans in that number 2, a driver who I kind of mentioned, he's been caught up by bad track position all night long. He's had a fast car, but he's just never been in position to get the draft of the leaders and stay right there with them. And once you fall out of that draft, you're going to be way slower than the guys who have it. So difficult struggle for him, but man, that car is still on rails. And Greg Evans, a very talented driver, the defending league champion. Don't count him out yet. Back in 6th, you've got Johnny Avila, a driver who made a lot of great moves early on in this event. We saw him pass a ton of cars within just a few short laps. After that, it seemed like his car started to fall off. Maybe not exactly the long-run speed he was looking for, but he has been consistent. He has been clean. He never complained about a top 10 run, which he currently has here on lap 45. Back in 7th, Craig Stykes, driver of the number 57. He's a driver who benefited quite a bit through the pit sequence, gained a few positions, got up inside the top 10, and right now kind of in no man's land. He's got nobody ahead of him to draft with. The car behind him isn't quite close enough to draft with him, so he's just kind of turning his laps and waiting for a big break, maybe a caution to get him closer to the pack, maybe some pit strategy on this upcoming sequence to gain a few more positions. But right now, he is running a great race, and I'll hand it to you to round out the top 10 here, Peter.
Yeah, just to give the people at home just a little bit of an update, Will Worcester, the number 29 machine, is on pit road right now. It has only been 20 laps since he was last on pit road, but we do believe he is kind of on the cusp of making it the remainder of the race here tonight. So Worcester will come to his pit crew. We know he's been nursing a lot of damage. Also want to highlight that Greg Evans has got around the number 27 of Drew Carroll. But let's go back to the number 88 machine of Thomas George, running right now in the 8th position. So the 88 is in position 8. And he, of course, started up there in the 3rd position, got himself up into the 2nd position on lap number 1 here tonight, but unfortunately lost a little bit of ground. And of course, after having a little bit of contact with AJ Digby, might have just dinged up the right-hand side of that number 8 machine, and number 88 machine, I should say. And ever since has been kind of dropping back through the field. You can see right now in front of the number 69 machine of Adam Jursky, who is right on his heels. We'll jump over to that number 69 machine, who's been putting together a really quiet race. Started in 10th, is running just inside the top 10 in 9th. So Jursky kind of keeping that Beef Jursky's cheesecake machine. Maybe that will be another poll for the fans at some point. What is your cheesecake of the race? Of course, Greg Rentz would have the cheesecake of the race for you guys, but he is kind of out doing other things. His schedule not conducive to commentating on 3Y TV at the moment. But that Beef Jursky's cheesecake machine now getting around Thomas George for that position. So we will have to jump from Adam Jursky, who now finds himself in 8th, all the way back to Brian Yazik in the number 55 machine, just kind of inside the top 10, but he's got a huge gap back to his teammate Michael Krobach behind him. But Yazik was up there at the front of the field towards the beginning of the race, got some right side damage, has definitely made some contact with the right side of the track, aka the wall, as Yazik right now in the thumbs up, cans are down machine, kind of nursing a top 10 car. But hopefully Yazik, who pitted on lap number 29, I do believe, he will probably be coming down pit road here in the next 10 laps or so. Behind him, Michael Krobach, his teammate, he pitted 2 laps prior to Brian Yazik in the number 72 machine, just outside the top 10 as they run. There is his thumbs up, cancer down machine, very similar looking machine to Brian Yazik, just kind of different colors on the numbers for the 72. But for right now, Michael Krobach not quite having the run that we saw him last week have at New Hampshire. Krobach got himself a 9th place finish here tonight, just outside the top 10. But like I said, quite a long way behind his teammate. In fact, if you kind of do the math on the gap between the 10th and 11th place cars right now. It is about 5.4 seconds. So Krobach here going to need a great last half of the race if he wants to close in on his teammate in front of him. Michael Larch is running in the 12th position, back behind him. And so, Greg Sykes headed down pit road as we talk. Sykes from inside the top 10, and he's got a little bit of right side damage. I'm wondering if that right side damage is new. Just going back, nope, that right side damage definitely not new. So he'll come down to his pit crew right there. Now, we're going to kind of end up through the field. There was a question that I posted in the chat a little while ago, whether or not you wanted your driver featured in the through the field. So we had one person chime in. That is the Joy of Driving thing. I want you to highlight Grant Brown. In fact, let's check out Grant Brown right now. Of course, driving the Joy of Driving machine. There he is in the number 15, working his way out of turn number 4. Here's the not so good news for Grant Brown here tonight. Speeding on pit road has relegated him down to the 18th position. Under his first round of pit stop 20 laps ago, he came down pit road. Andre got busted for speeding. Also, Woody Mahan in that same boat, also busted for speeding in the number 84 machine. Grant Brown, unfortunately, 18th after we saw him charge up through the field in the early running.
And you can't blame a guy for speeding on pit road at a track like this. I feel like the pit road here is very similar to Pocono. I mentioned it during our Pocono broadcast that when you have such a long run-up to pit road and such an open entrance, where you're not worried about getting on the brakes and slowing yourself down enough that you can even turn down into it, you're tempted to get into that pit road as quickly as you can and carry as much speed as you can. And of course, sometimes you just carry a little bit too much, you get that penalty. And unfortunately for Grant Brown in that number 15, who did just move up a position on the scoring pylon, I think, that kind of mistake is a lot more costly in a race that goes green the whole way. And, well, we've gone 52 laps, and there has not been a yellow flag yet. So no cautions to bunch the field back up and kind of help him make up for that mistake. Now, if there were to be a yellow flag, he is the first car one lap down, so I believe that would grant him the lucky dog wave around. If not, then he could still just stay out when everybody else comes down pit, and then he would be on the lead lap. So either way, it would help him. But right now, the race has stayed green, and he's probably just hoping for a caution, just hoping that it doesn't happen anywhere near him, as there is a gaggle of cars right in front of Grant Brown at number 15. Tyler Seville in that number 11, dealing with a hornet's nest. I believe that's Will Worsler ahead of him. And by the way, I want to shine a spotlight on Will Worsler as the number 11 throwing a big block down to the wall. You mentioned earlier, Peter, that Will Worsler came down pit road for the second stop a lot sooner than anybody else. And that has put him on fresher tires. He has been making up quite a bit of time, but it's an interesting strategy call. He should be good to the end. When he pitted was right on the edge of being able to make it to the end of the race. These drivers who are coming down pit road right now that you saw right there, Greg Evans, and I believe that was the 27. I could be wrong. Those drivers, Drew Carroll in the 27. Those guys are going to be very comfortable on fuel, whereas Worsler, he's going to be a little bit closer, but man, he's been on fresh tires. He's been making up some track position here. And if anybody is trying some crazy strategies, it's Will Worsler in that 29. And I respect it. I'm curious to see how it plays out.
Yeah, it definitely was the number 27 machine of Drew Carroll. Just kind of like what you said a little while ago. You can't blame a driver for getting on pit road and speeding on pit road. You can't blame us for getting those Lob Puddle Motorsports machines back to front, as they all have the thumbs up, cancer down scheme. Of course, that is a great cause that they have. So we are not going to harp on that at all. I love seeing those thumbs up, cancer down machines. Adam Jersky on pit road right now. John Eckhart down pit road. Greg Evans, of course, Drew Carroll was just on pit road. Craig Sykes, Will Worsler have also made their second stop. Michael Larch, AJ Digby have made their second stop as well. Bad news for AJ Digby, speeding on pit road for the number 14 machine. A lengthy stop for the number 14. He has relegated himself down to 21st position as they run, and he is the last driver still running. And I know for AJ Digby, it is a big shame that he's currently down there. In fact, I don't even know if that number 14 is. Yes, he is still driving out there. But this is a racetrack that AJ Digby loves. In fact, I think AJ Digby's first ever win here on 3 Wide TV came here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway a couple of years back. So Digby here really trying to have a good run. And unfortunately, it appears to be unraveling for the Will Worcester Racing driver. Like I said, he finds himself about 2 full laps behind your race leaders as they run. In fact, sure enough, he is 2 laps down, but he does have fresher tires. So that's the good news for the AJ Digby fans in the chat. The bad news is he finds himself well down the running order. So with that being said, we're just waiting now on your race leaders, Scott Eckert, Jeff Ward, Tyler Seville, all up there within 2 seconds of one another to come down and make their presumed final pit stop here tonight. 25 more laps to go. Actually, I take that back. Yep, never mind. I am 25 laps to go. As Scott Eckert, Jeff Ward, and Tyler Seville. Oh, sometimes I'm just trying to do math on the fly here. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Johnny Avila, the number 63, is on pit road, winner of a couple races this season in the Sim Racers Club Premier Series. He'll come to his pit crew for his final pit stop, and that leaves us with still about, I'd say, 11 or so cars waiting to come down pit road for their final stop here tonight. Andre.
And this battle between our leaders, Eckert and Ward, it's been really interesting because you can look through the field and you can see so much separation, a lot of it caused by the first pit sequence and everything staying green. But these 2 drivers, even after Seville started to fall off with the tire wear and he fell back a ways, the number 9 and the number 70 have not been apart from each other the entire race. They've just been bumper to bumper for almost 60 laps now, and they have not gotten away. So very close in pace. And I gotta wonder if the 9 isn't just biding his time. He's fine riding behind the number 70, or if he's really giving it all he's got, and that 70 is just barely outpacing him. Either way, this battle is not over till it's over. And this is something that I think, if it continues this way, is going to be down to the wire between these guys. A lot of talent between them, and not much track between them. So it's going to be interesting. Although now they got the number 69. Who kind of split him up a little bit. That gave the number 70 some breathing room. Of course, Adam Dursky on fresher tires, as is the number 63 there. He is also on fresher tires, so they're going to make their way around the leader. And Johnny Avila actually getting some word on the radio from Scott Eckert. He said, sorry, didn't mean to block you. He was talking to Johnny there. Kind of funny to hear the leader apologizing to a lap down car, but of course that is the kind of conduct you see in this league. These drivers, they know what they're about. They're a very clean group. And I think the 70 knew, hey, the 63's got fresher tires. He didn't want to really get in the way there. But it's hard, man. It's hard to let faster cars go at this track. It's so one lane at times. And even if you're trying to do what's right, sometimes the cars just fall, you hold somebody up. But luckily, no harm, no foul. The 63 got around him, no problem. And they're going to be on those fresher tires pulling away for the time being. And the number 9 currently dealing with Digby, who's on those fresher tires, trying to reel the leader back in as these 2 continue to battle. And just kind of scanning through the field. Again, a lot of separation, although I'm looking at the number 84. He's making his way down pit road now. That's Woody Mahan in that 84 machine. And everybody else right now on track. He's the only one on pit road at the current moment. And yeah, everybody just waiting out to see how these strategies affect their track position.
Yeah, and of course the lap counter just ticking away rather rapidly here tonight. Dare I say that Sam Maxwell, the league owner and organizers, while it might be a little bit lighter after this one because there is a caution-free bounty in effect here in this particular series. That's right, if you run a caution-free race here, they do a cash payout for the top driver who does not have any incident points, and then they select a couple other drivers back behind them until the money pool goes to 0. Of course, we've had a couple of those payouts this season after last year. Andre, I think we went a good majority of the season. I think we might have only had 1 caution-free race the entire season last year. And this year we've had multiple. It has really been a turnaround here in the caution-free races, and I'm sure much to the admin's approval, because when they run these caution-free races, it makes their lives a heck of a lot easier for the next 7 days. So hopefully we don't have any more cautions for their sake, although Sam Maxwell's wallet probably doesn't appreciate it all too much. But hey, 21 laps to go, and this battle for the race lead between Scott Eckridge and the number 9 machine of Jeff Ward, I mean, they've been nose to tail. You mentioned it, Andre. just glued together out there. They've been able to separate themselves from Tyler Seville now up to about 2 seconds. Here comes the front two down pit road. Scott Eckridge coming. Ooh, big slide out the back of the number 70 machine, excuse me. But he's able to, I believe, get down to pit road speed. Now the big questions, will any of these drivers slide through their pit box? We know, Andre, this is the money stop for your top three as Tyler Seville joins Eckridge and Ward on pit road right now.
Absolutely. Everything is on the line with this pit stop, and if you slide through your box, you're going to have real issues. But for our leaders... Oh, the number 70 slid through his stall. He had to put it in reverse. Jeff Ward got the right sides up on his car a little bit sooner. We're going to have to wait and see. Does he get out ahead of the 70? Now, the 70 has that straight shot out of pit road, but the number 9 is going to get the advantage, and that is going to essentially be, I believe, for the race lead, depending on how this all shakes out. So Jeff Ward getting ahead of the number 70, and behind them, you've got Tyler Seville now also making his way out. And man, what a turn of events that is, because Peter, it is really difficult to pass here. I mean, we've seen how long Jeff Ward has been following right behind the number 70, but he was never able to make that overtake. He was never able to make that move. Now he's got the lead. Can he play defense as well as Eckridge did?
That is a great question. There's a little bit of right front damage on the number 9 machine of Jeff Ward as we go on board at the top of your screen with the driver of the number 7 machine. Just went a little bit long in his box, had to back up as your race leaders there might have been having a little bit of issues with Craig Stykes in the number 57 machine. Stykes on much older tires here. He's in the 6th position as they run. We do have, of course, Drew Carroll in the number 27 machine. He's quite a ways in front of your leaders, but he has much older tires. Same thing with Greg Evans. Thomas George in the number 88 machine is scored as your race leader as they run, but he has yet to make his second pit stop here tonight. So presumably Thomas George here will be coming down pit road very soon. He is at 36 laps on his fuel tank this time by, and as I say that, he's going to peel off onto pit road. So now we will keep our eyes on Jeff Ward and Scott Eckridge. They have quite a ways to catch Greg Evans, who now is your race leader, and Drew Carroll, but they have much fresher tires, about 8-lap fresher tires on the number 9 and the number 70 versus Greg Evans and Drew Carroll. So from what we have seen, that's about a second or so per lap, maybe even a little bit more than that, that Jeff Ward and Scott Eckridge will be faster than the 2 cars in front of them. And how about Tyler Seville here, Andre? I thought maybe with that mistake that Eckridge might have made that it might pull Tyler Seville into the mix. He's currently just finding himself about 1.3 seconds behind Jeff Ward, just under a second behind Scott Eckridge. Do you think that's enough where he can use that draft to maybe close in on the top 2?
I'll tell you, that's right on the bubble of where the draft ends. It's really close. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to catch it or not. Looking at the lap times, I think he might just be hanging on to it. But even then, you got 2 cars ahead of you that are kind of working together. 2 cars is always going to be faster than 1 down these straightaways, so it's going to be an uphill battle for him regardless. We'll have to see if he can use this draft, and it looks like coming through turns 1 and 2, he might have closed in a little bit here. So that is going to be something to keep an eye on, as is the continual battle for the lead. And what a costly mistake. I mean, it was only 1 position that Eckridge lost when he slid through his pit stall, but it was the position. It was the lead. Now he's got to try to make the move on the number 9. And he's gotten some really good runs coming out of the corner, especially coming out of turn 2. I've noticed he is incredibly strong there. And it seems like he gets to the back bumper of the number 9 about halfway down the straightaway. And it's like you mentioned earlier when the roles were reversed, Peter. The number 9 was getting the big runs, and you were wondering, well, why isn't he diving to the inside? Why isn't he making that move? And I got to wonder if the drivers aren't making those moves, not because they don't want to, but because they know their tires are going to tell them no. They're going to dive it down to the inside. They're going to get right on that white line, perhaps up on that rumble strip, and then their car is going to say, nah, we're going up the track. And when that happens, it's a bad day for everybody involved. The cars that are above them, the cars that are behind them. And I think these drivers are a little bit maybe cautious, especially when you're getting this close to the caution-free bounty as well. So It's hard to make a pass here for the lead. It really is, but it just goes to show how high of a level of competition there is with this group of guys. And the number 70, what I've noticed with him there is that he's getting loose, especially on these fresher tires. He's gotten down on that white line a couple times, gotten a little bit sideways, and I've even seen him counter steer a time or two. And you know as well as I do, Peter, that scuffs those tires up. That gets the temperatures up, and the higher the temps, the faster they wear. So I don't think Eckrich is doing himself any favors getting so aggressive on the apex of the corners. And it looks like the number 9 is pulling away a little bit at a time. So I don't know. Maybe that 70 not liking the dirty air behind the 9.
Yeah, you see up there, your top right of your screen, or top of your screen, I should say. That is the number 69 of Adam Jersky. Just worked his way around Craig Stykes. Adam Jersky has 4 lap pressure tires of the number 57 machine, so no big surprise there. Jersky running about 3.5 seconds behind Johnny Avila, but Avila has fresher tires than Jersky, so we expect Avila to have that tire advantage in his number 63 machine. Tyler Seville not really closing in on Jeff Ward or Scott Eckrich. In fact, if anything, he's lost a little bit of time to those two drivers in front of him. Scott Eckrich, last time by, one of the fastest cars on the entire circuit, right behind Jeff Ward. And I did mention a little while ago, I called Jeff Ward and Scott Eckrich our top 2, when obviously right now they're not our top 2. That would be Greg Evans and Drew Carroll. But the lap times that Greg Evans and Drew Carroll are both running, 54.5, 54.6 for the 2 and the 27 respectively. 2 seconds slower than Jeff Ward and Scott Eckrich right now. That's huge. I mean, at this rate, in 2 laps, we will have a new race leader. In fact, you could barely see the number 27 of Drew Carroll on the horizon when the number 9 and the 70 came out of pit lane. But they are now getting very, very close, within a second. So we expect that battle for a second to kind of spur up here. And of course, it's go time here, Andre. We're down to just 13 laps to go. Might Scott Eckrich realize that he's got kind of 2 opportunities to maybe use that slower traffic of Drew Carroll and Greg Evans as kind of a pick to get around the number 9 machine of Jeff Ward here in the closing laps?
As a driver, that is absolutely something that is on your mind. You know that when you're coming up on slower cars, that's going to present a possible opportunity or a possible hindrance, depending on how it plays out. You never really know how it's going to play out when you get up to a slower car that's on older tires. You can hope that it goes one way, and you can do everything in your power to make sure it goes favorably for you. But at the end of the day, racing's racing, and it's pretty unpredictable. Right there, when they got around Drew Carroll, that was pretty kosher, I would say. I mean, they both just got around the bottom. There's no fuss, no mess. They just went around the bottom. That put them up into 2nd and 3rd, respectively. Now there is only 1 car left for these guys to get around, to get back to the 1-2 running order that they've had all night long. Just reversed around. Still 1-2, but now the 9, of course, will be leading the way. And I got to wonder if maybe the number 2 of Greg Evans was hoping either for a caution, because at this point, if there was a caution, everybody would come down pit road for tires, regardless of when they pitted, or if he was hoping that the tire wear would plateau before they got to him, because eventually it will. No matter how much older your tires are than the next guys, eventually it's going to even out, and the lap times will become very similar. However, Greg Evans, I think, is a little unlucky in that they're going to reach him a few laps before that happens. Jeff Ward ran a 53.3 last time around, and Greg Evans ran a 54.7. It'll probably be another 5 or 6 laps before Jeff Ward is running lap times comparable to the number 2. And in the meantime, he's right there at his bumper. So it just didn't quite play out like the number 2 was hoping, I'm sure. But it did get him a little bit of track position. And if he can hang on to that car, he should be able to stay in 3rd for the time being, at least, as Tyler Seville is running lap times comparable to that number 2. Greg Evans with a 54.7 last time around. With the number 11, he ran a 53.9, so only a few tenths faster. And by the time he gets to him, he'll probably be more evened out. So, again, Greg Evans not getting the lead through strategy, but he is benefiting. He came into this sequence in 5th, and it looks like he's going to be cycling out when it's all said and done there in the podium. So definitely a smart play there. And Greg Evans, a driver that's never going to give up. He's never going to be rolling over and just accepting his track position. He's going to do everything he can to get as close to the front as possible, and that is exactly what he's done tonight with a great showing, working his way up through the field by any means necessary. But right now, it is back to Jeff Ward being the leader. Number 70, Scott Eckrich, trying to make that overtake. And we are at 10 to go in the event.
Yeah, so we have a great battle up at the top of the field, just looking up and down the scoring pylon. Probably the next best battle for position will be between Will Worser and John Eckhart. Eckhart has 8 lap fresher tires than Will Worser, but in fact, that number 45 will be trying to make that pass. There you see them on your screen, locked up in that battle for the 13th spot. Looks like Worsler has it. Worsler holding on to it, of course. John Eckhart here tonight running that Gunskins.com scheme here in the Gunskins.com 200 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. As we get a little bit of the 3-wide TV multicam up at the top of your screen, it's the battle for the race lead. Now, as I say that, Mr. Producer has to flip it around on me. Now it's that battle for the 13th spot, as looks like Eckhart has got around Worser, but Worser trying to do all he can to hold on in the number 29 machine. Can he stay there through turn number 4 here? It's going to be tight. It looks like Eckhart has got around him. And back behind them is Alan Young. And as I say that, Alan Young going to just drop to the inside and go right on past Will Worser. And we have information at the front of the field. Scott Eckrich might have just made a little bit of contact with the outside wall through the short chute between turn number 3 and 4. Not seeing any damage on the Amsoil Chevrolet, but it is going to cause him to lose a little bit of ground on your race leader, Jeff Ward. We'll see if we can go back and get a little bit of a 3-wide TV replay of that one, as Alan Young has also now made the pass on John Eckhart. So all that work that Eckhart just did to get 13th, well, Alan Young just came on through and swooped it away. As up at the front of the field, I think Eckrich, even though he lost a little bit of time there, Andre, he's still in that range where he definitely can get the draft. Here is that little contact. Man, he just kissed it. He just absolutely kissed that wall. That is about as gentle contact as you can get with that wall here in Indianapolis as he can get.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a bobble there. Luckily, he didn't lose as much time as he could have. But, man, you know, it's not said and done yet. We're not trying to say that this thing is over. But imagine if Jeff Ward walks away the winner tonight, and the thing that took it away from Scott Eckrich was one minor mistake. Out of 80 laps, he's driven almost flawlessly the entire event. Because this thing has stayed green pretty much the entire time, and because that just amplifies the cost of little mistakes, that gave the lead to the number 9, and it may very well be the thing that allows her to walk away the winner if the number 70 can't reel him back in. And that's got to be gut-wrenching. Just one little mistake, one that's so easy to make, and he has really put himself on the uphill battle for it. It's rough, but he is driving that thing as hard as he can. You can tell just by the way he's going through the corners, how deep he's driving it in. He's not letting the 9 drive away. And if he gets his way, he's not going to walk away in second. He's going to try to get back up there. He's going to try to battle it out with Jeff Ward, as those two have done all night long. And we're just going to have to see if he can get back up there. Sounds like we might have had a little bit of a run-in between Tyler Seville and Greg Evans. I heard some apologizing going on between the two. And so I'm not exactly sure what happened, but it looks like Tyler Seville is up into third. So that's going to give him the podium as our leaders work their way around some lap traffic. That's the number 17 machine, of course, piloted by Kevin Stone. So he's going to go a lap down there. And I'll tell you what, Peter, looks like Scott Eckrich is slowly closing the gap back to the number 9. He lost some time when he got into the wall. I don't think that damage is holding him back. If anything, he's been closing in ever since then. So maybe he's going to make a late race charge at it here.
Yeah, that number 70 definitely able to close in on Jeff Ward. They're down to just about 0.4 of a second separating your top two, but we only have 5 more laps to go here at the famous Brickyard in Speedway, Indiana. It's called Speedway, Indiana for obvious reasons, just outside Indianapolis. And this 2.5-mile racetrack, just 12.5 miles left to go unless we get a green-white checker. We do have a recent retirement, Gordon Digby, the number 85 machine here tonight, having issues coming out of turn number 4, ended up inside wall, in the inside wall, coming out of turn number 4 on the way to pit lane. Not sure exactly what happened there, but hearing that the number 85 made heavy contact with the turn 4 wall, shot down across the racetrack. but when that number 85 ground to a halt, it was off the racing surface. So we stay green flag here tonight. The iRacing flagman not electing to throw a caution flag for that one. Gordon is out of the number 85 machine as it currently sits in its pit box. He will finish in the 21st position here tonight. Again, looking up and down the scoring pylon to see if we have any battles for position. Maybe Brian Yazek catching Craig Stykes. Up at the front, looks like Jeff Ward now able to put another about an additional 0.3 of a second between himself and Scott Eckrich, now up to about 0.7 of a second. Maybe just now starting to turn on the jets. As you can see last time by, there's that 0.3 that I talked about down there in the graphic down there. So we will keep our eyes on that, whether or not Jeff Ward can add an additional little group of time as we're closing in here on just 4 more laps to go at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway as they blast across the yard of bricks here. It has definitely been a stellar race here for the race win. I don't think anyone has had anything for these top 2 here tonight. Jeff Ward and Scott Eckrich kind of been in their own zip code on the scoring charts. I know we saw Tyler Seville hold on to them for that first run, but ever since that first pit stop, Scott Eckrich and Tyler Seville, Jeff Ward and Scott Eckrich have managed the pit strategy perfectly. They've been able to manage the racetrack, minimize those mistakes, and now find themselves 1-2. The only major mistakes here tonight, Scott Eckrich. That pit road mistake, that is definitely going to be potentially the nail in the coffin if we don't see another caution flag and if Jeff Ward can keep the number 9 machine clean.
Absolutely. Seems like he's done a great job of that so far tonight. And with only 3 laps to go, he is in pretty good position. Like you said, he turned on those rocket boosters in at number 9, and he has been pulling away from Scott Eckrich little by little. And I think that's going back to what I had mentioned earlier, where early on in this run, right when they'd come out of the pits, Eckrich was really driving his car hard. He was getting down on that apex and he was sliding those tires. And I said in the long run, that might slow him down. It's going to scuff those tires up. And you compound that with the little bit of damage he might have got from just kissing that outside wall there between turns 3 and 4. And his car maybe not what it once was. So only a little bit of time left for him to try to make a charge at it. And of course, Tyler Seville has done a pretty good job getting back up on the podium behind them. He is currently running about 3 seconds back from the leaders, but he was as far back as 5th. He was able to get back up to P3 if he can bring this run home. That'll be a nice podium position for the number 11 after a strong night tonight. And right now we're going to be coming to the line to take lap 80. It'll be the white flag of the race and about car lengths between our 2 leaders.
And how about that? Another caution-free race here in the Sim Racers Club Premier Series. The Premier driver showing us how it is done as Jeff Ward, the number 9 machine, navigating his way through turn number 2 for the final time here tonight onto the backstretch, trying to get as good of a run as he can. He still has about a half-second advantage over Scott Eckrich, trying to break that draft maybe just a little bit here down the backstretch. But that number 70 is just too far back. Jeff Ward working his way into turn number 3 and the short chute. There won't be any slower traffic in front of him. Now, here on 3OI TV, we did see a car blow a tire in the final corner, take out the leader in the last race that we broadcasted here on the channel. That's not going to happen here tonight. Jeff Ward misses the JR Hildebrand wall, and he's going to come and take the win in the Gunskins.com 200 here at Indianapolis.
And what a race it was for Jeff Ward. Behind the leader almost all night long. He bided his time. And when the moment was right, he capitalized on a slight mistake, and he is going to walk away the winner. Scott Eckrich bringing it home at P2 with Tyler Seville just barely getting up on that podium. Greg Evans, 4th, and Kevin Stone is going to be behind him, 17th, a couple laps down. But, man, what a race that was, and how costly was that one little pit road mistake, Peter?
Yeah, it definitely was costly. That is for sure. That's what gave Jeff Ward the race lead that he never looked back on. We did have a little bit of a battle to the line for the 10th position between Michael Krobach, able to hold on by just about a 1/10 of a second, believe it or not, over Thomas J. George, who will finish back in 11th here tonight. And, Thomas George doing a little bit of acrobatics on the backstretch. But we will get to see the number 9 machine, Jeff Ward, in victory lane here tonight. And The good news about Jeff Ward, he was the runner-up last week here in the series, but this will be Jeff Ward's first win of the season. We saw a lot of pace out of him last week at New Hampshire. Didn't get the win, just came up a little bit short, but here tonight, victory lane for the first time here in the season. Big shout out to that number 9 machine tonight.
Absolutely. We're going to try to get the full running order rundown if we can get that graphic pulled up. And then after that, it's going to be time for some post-race interviews with our podium finishers. Here we go. Here is the final running order for tonight's Gunskins.com Brickyard at 200. Jeff Ward walking away the winner with Scott Eckert in second, Tyler Seville third. We've covered those guys. Greg Evans in fourth. Drew Carroll bringing it home in the top 5 after a bit of a topsy-turvy up and down night in that number 27. Johnny Avila bringing it home at P6. Adam Dursky in 7th. Craig Stykes coming out of nowhere at the end of the night to bring himself up inside the top 10. P8. Ryan Yazik 9th. Running out your top 10, Michael Krobach.
And then in the 11th position here tonight, just 1/10 behind Michael Krobach, Thomas George. Michael Larch going to come home in the 12th position. Alan Young in 13th. John Eckhart, the 4th, is going to come home 14th. Will Worcer 15th. The last car on the lead lap was the number 37 of Corey Benton, sporting that University of Utah machine here tonight. Kevin Stone in one of the Gunskins.com machines, going to finish 17th. Woody Mahan 18th. AJ Digby 19th. Could not overcome that pit road speeding penalty. Him and Woody Mahan there getting that pit road speeding penalty. Same story with Grant Brown, who comes home in 20th.
And rounding out the rest of your field is going to be Gordon Digby in the 85, Mark Myers in the 04, Troy Haight in the 28, and Todd Kirkwood, who failed the grid, is going to finish 80 laps down. That is your final running order for tonight's Gunskins.com Brickyard 200. And now, I think it is time for some interviews, and it's going to be Peter Short with your third place finisher, Tyler Seville.
Yeah, I'm down here at the end of pit road with driver of the number 11 machine, Tyler Seville, who held on dearly for life onto the back of Scott Eckridge and Jeff Ward for that first green flag run that we had there for the first pit stop, but unfortunately unable to exactly get to their back bumper again in the back half of the race. But Tyler, all in all, a really good race for you. You started up there in 4th. You showed a lot of pace here tonight, just missing just a fraction on those top 2 cars. Tell us about your race.
Yeah, it's been a rough couple weeks, so I'm glad that my finishes match the speed. I think I would have been able to hang on to the bumper like I did that first run had certain lap cars given way like etiquette would allow. But that didn't happen. I got raced really hard for some reason, and that cost me to lose some time that I was never quite able to make up. Because if you get behind on the 9 and the 70, you're not going to make up any time on them usually.
Yeah, and we saw you dearly trying to close in on those top 2 right there when you came off of pit road. Of course, Eckridge made a little bit of a blunder on pit road that allowed you to almost get to that point where you could draft back up to them. But how much closer do you think you needed to be in order to use that draft and utilize it to close back up and make it a 3-horse race at the end of the race?
I probably needed to be within under a second to the back of Eckridge there. Coming out, I was at like 1.2-ish, and I was able to make up a little bit, like you said, but I was never able quite to get over that under a second mark to where the draft would play a bigger role of it. So then it was just sitting back and focusing and making sure I was going to be able to pass the 27 and the 2 to get up to 3rd there.
Well, you know, all in all, a really good race for you and that number 11 machine. And of course, next week we go to Watkins Glen, the super speedway of the road courses, as I think Mark Martin once dubbed it. What are your thoughts about going to the Glen?
I'm looking forward to it. I feel like I've been pretty good on road courses this year. I almost won the Roval last year. So I know we'll get the practice time in, and hopefully we can put some more cars in the top 5. Shout out to Craig Stykes for him coming back and getting a top 10 finish today.
Absolutely, and I know you got some more shout-outs to give on the Arch Telecom number 11 machine, so let's hear them.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks to Arch Telecom, and a shout-out to my teammates who were racing today. I know some of them ran into a couple issues. Shout-out to Richard and Doug, who weren't able to make it tonight. But overall, the Warsaw Racing teammates and the Synergy Esports team that's new as like a satellite team to us, they had a good showing today.
Absolutely. Well, Tyler, we'll see you next week in the Sim Speed Shop Wheelman Showdown Watkins Glen Grand Prix. Best of luck at the Glen.
Thank you.
All right, that's going to do it for tonight's third place finisher driver of the number 11 machine of Tylersville. I believe that our runner-up, Scott Eckridge, has been caught by Andre Grambush.
Scott Eckert, you got a copy?
Yep.
So first of all, congratulations on a very impressive second place run tonight. You were up front all night long, showing exactly what kind of pace you have. Tonight's race was kind of a strange one. It was caution-free, despite how close everybody was in proximity. I got to know, how did the car feel out there, and how did you feel about the race going caution-free?
Well, I think anytime you get a caution-free race, it's fun for us drivers because we get to pit ourselves against each other for the long run and see who's got the pace on the short run, long run, and the whole package there. But yeah, it was a good night. Would have loved to have been one more, but we botched that pit stop there on that last one, and Jeff got around us there. And it's just the aero at this track. We kind of knew from practice going in that it was going to be more of a super speedway race than anything, so we kind of tried playing it as such. Me and Jeff tried playing real nice there and tried getting away from as many people as we could, pushing each other, and just unfortunately at the end there we didn't have enough to get them. But real glad that my teammate got his first win too there. So.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the aero package. How difficult was it to pass out there? How different did the car feel when you were out front versus when you found yourself a little bit more in the pack?
Yeah, I was just talking to Jeff about this. I kind of thought I felt like I was saving tire behind Jeff, but just the aero, it was too much of with everybody running the exact same line, the aero was just too much of the equalizer. And anytime you got a run on them, you would just hit the aero push wall and you just wouldn't be able to turn. So it's kind of how some of these bigger tracks have been going. I thought it raced exactly like Pocono did, so I guess it is what it is, and we'll move on.
Absolutely. Well, a lot of momentum to carry forward. I mean, finishing on the podium and getting the pole, obviously a lot of speed out of that number 70 machine. Next week we're going to a road course, Watkins Glen. How do you feel about going to a road course?
Well, after I messed up that Coda race royally with the brake issue, I feel like I need to redeem myself there. So we're gonna be hoping that one goes a lot better than the last one.
All right, Scott Eckert going to be driving motivated next week. It sounds like we're looking forward to seeing that because you're already fast enough when you don't have that added motivation. I'm scared to see what you can do when you have it. So that'll be fun to watch. Before we let you go, Scott, anybody you'd like to shout out or thank?
Yeah, I'd like to thank our team, Graphics LC Motorsports, and then obviously shout out Jeff once again for getting his first win in this series this year. So good win to him.
All right, Scott, we thank you for your time, and hopefully we're talking to you again next week.
Thank you.
That was second place finisher Scott Eckridge. Now Peter Short has our race winner, Jeff Ward.
Yeah, I'm down here in victory lane. Maybe, just maybe, has a glass of milk beside his sim rig right now, picking up the win here tonight. Jeff Ward. Jeff, I'll tell you what, a very special night for that number 9 machine getting to victory lane for the first time this season here in the Sim Racers Club Premier Series. It seemed like all it took was just a little bit of a pit stop error there on the part of Scott Eckertree to take the lead. He never looked back, but kind of the big question is were you saving maybe just a little bit of something for that number 70 if he had not made that mistake on pit road?
Yeah, man. First, we're gonna start celebrating. That feels like a huge win for us here at the Brickyard. I've had a couple pretty good wins throughout my sim race career, but this one here, it's right at the top. I was pretty pumped up coming across the line. And no, I wasn't saving. Like you said, Scott, just made a mistake there on pit road. Was able to come out in front, and that clean air really means everything. Like he said, you get to where you're so aero tight behind the car that you're following that you can't hardly get the thing to turn, and you dang near bounce it off the wall if you ain't careful. So that meant everything. Scott was awesome. He's been a great teammate. He cut me a couple breaks there, even though we was out front when we was in lap traffic. he could have went to the inside and fought us, and then we probably would have fought pretty hard, ate our tires up, and the guys behind us probably would have caught us. So just an all in all great team win, man. I'm so excited to come get a win here in just our third start. This gives us a whole lot of momentum going forward. Hopefully we can keep clicking them off.
Well, I was going to mention, last week at New Hampshire, you definitely showed a lot of pace coming home and finishing in second on the podium in only your second start. I think eyebrows started to be raised with the pace that you had. And here tonight, going one step better at Indianapolis. How cool is it to kind of jump into this league and all of a sudden hit the ground running and find yourself in victory lane in only your third start?
At the beginning of this race here, I just kind of tucked in behind Scott and kind of let him pull me around the track and followed his line. Learned a lot from him just in that first 30 laps that I could kind of, apply towards the later end of the race there. So it feels great to jump right in here. I hadn't run the new car a whole lot, ran a little last year, but it feels good. We're learning a lot. Back at New Hampshire, like you said, we took a risk there and felt like if caution didn't come out with 4 to go, we would have got that one as well. So luck, that would have been kind of luck on our side. This one here was able to pretty much go green the whole race, so get out front and just was able to hold it there.
Yeah, definitely an awesome result for you here tonight at Indianapolis. Next week we go to Watkins Glen. We haven't got to see you twist left and right yet. Are you a road course racer, and what do you think about the Glen?
Well, the Glen is my favorite road course. I'm pretty sure we won't have anything for Scott. Johnny, there's a couple fast guys in there I know just by looking at the stats from the road courses they've already ran this year. So some real fast guys on road courses, Greg Evans. So yeah, man, I'm hoping for a top 5 out there. I feel like it's definitely my favorite road course. We'll just have to get in practice and see how we stack up.
Well, definitely going to be a lot of fun watching you with your first road course of the season here in the Sim Racers Club Premier Series. Of course, that is the Sim Speed Shop Watkins Glen Grand Prix next week. But victory lane for you here tonight in the GunsKids.com Brickyard 200. I know you want to give some shout-outs, so let's hear them.
Yeah, big thanks to Graphic LC Motorsports letting me come on board with them this season. Thanks to Lexington Brewing Company and Kentucky Bourbon Barrel Ale. Thanks to the Joy of Driving. Thanks to Arctic Coolers. Thanks to just everybody on the team there, Mark, Scott, and everybody else behind the scenes, friends and family. And thanks to you guys there in the booth for calling the show.
Absolutely. It's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of fun to win. I know that. So go celebrate your win here tonight, Jeff, and we'll see you next week.
Yes, sir, we will. Thank you.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for our post-race interviews. Jeff Ward taking home his first win of the season here in the Sim Racers Club Premier Series, adding another winner to the list of winners this season. And, you look back, and, of course, you got Greg Evans, you got Scott Eckrich on that list, Tyler Seville, Jeff Yenish, Drew Carroll, and now joining that group is Jeff Ward, and also, of course, Johnny Avila's got 2 wins to his name so far this season. But a great race here in Indianapolis, caution-free. I wasn't expecting a caution-free race. I know we kind of talked about it, I think at the top of the show before we went even green flag on whether or not that was even possible. But they said, hey, we're going to go out here and run a caution-free race, and it was a good one all the way to the checkered flag, Andre.
You called it before the race even started. You said there's a good chance it goes caution-free. I, being a continually incorrect commentator that I am, said I didn't think it was going to go caution-free. And I was proven wrong by the sheer talent in this field. It was a great race all night long. It's not often, Peter, that you see a race go caution-free, and still the top 2 are only separated by less than a second when it comes down to the end of it. So absolutely fantastic showing by everybody involved. I don't know about you, but I am looking forward to a road course race next week.
Absolutely. Definitely going to be a fun one in upstate New York for the Sim Speed Shop Wheelman Showdown Watkins Glen Grand Prix, August 4th, 9 o'clock Eastern, right here on 3Y TV. But that is going to do it here for the Gunskins.com Brickyard 200 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Make sure to check out, of course, Gunskins.com here tonight, as well as the other series sponsors here in the Sim Racers Club Premier Series. awesome group of people here putting this show on for you each and every week. But for myself, Peter Short, Andre Graham Bush, and producer Mr. Carlos Acosta, have a good night, stay safe, and we shall see ya.